Welcome back. This is part 4, chapter 4, Adam Bede. This is from the exam perspective that I'm making this video. So we'll be covering it in few parts as we go. This is the summary part, the first part. Then we'll look at the characteristics of the individual members of that story. And then we'll critically analyze the entire novel. And then finally we'll do who said to whom. Chapter 4, Adam Bede. We are learning specifically for our syllabus the 53 chapter number 53 of the novel The Verdict. The court setting is described in vivid detail, portraying the stark contrast between the grand aged surroundings and the emotional turmoil unfolding within. As Adam Bede is brought to the dock, he is struck by Hetty Sorrel's transformation. Though she stands before him, she is unrecognizable as the vibrant woman he once knew. Adam fights his emotions, recalling the Hetty he had loved, now replaced by a cold and distant figure in the courtroom. The chapter's pivotal moment comes within the testimony of Sahara Stone, who recounts her experience with Hetty. Sahara describes how Hetty came to her house, weary and destitute, asking for a place to stay. Despite Sarah's misgivings, she offers Hetty lodging, and later she helps her deliver a child in the night. Sarah, showing concern for the young woman, tends to Hetty but grows uneasy when Hetty refuses to share information about her friends or family. When Sarah leaves to consult a minister, Hetty disappears, leaving behind only her belongings and the baby, which Sarah later identifies. She takes the baby along. John Olding, another witness, then describes how he encountered Hetty, seemingly distraught and out of place, near a haystack. After hearing a strange cry and investigating, he discovers the body of the dead child hidden under a bush. Hetty is later found in the same area, sitting quietly, unresponsive, with bread on her lap. This confirms her involvement in the child's death, and Adam, hearing the grim evidence, is overcome with despair. Despite Mr. Irwine's testimony speaking to Hetty's previous good character, the case is clear. The jury delivers the expected guilty verdict, but there is no recommendation for mercy. Hetty, emotionless throughout the most of the trial, is visibly shaken when the judge sentences her to death by hanging. At this moment, she shrieks in terror, causing a ripple of despair in the courtroom, while Adam, struck by the horror of the sentence, stretches out his arms towards her, unable to reach her before she collapses into unconsciousness. The chapter concludes with a grim reflection on Hetty's faith, her tragic fall from grace, and Adam's profound grief, leaving the reader to contemplate the consequences of her actions and the emotional toll and on those who loved her. Next, let us go through the detailed character sketch and critical evaluation of the key figures. Adam Bede. Character sketch. Adam Bede, a deeply moral and kind-hearted carpenter, is central to the emotional core of the novel. In this chapter, he is depicted as tall, solemn, and visibly altered by the burden of grief. His suffering is etched into his features, highlighting the emotional toll of the trial. Adam's feelings towards Hetty Sorrel evolve from romantic love to a deep tragic sorrow as he realizes the full extent of her actions. His inner turmoil is palpable throughout the trial, especially during the testimony and the eventual verdict. He is unable to reconcile the Hetty he once adored with the woman who stands accused of a heinous crime. Let's critically evaluate Adam Bede. Adam represents moral integrity, the everyman who struggles with the harsh realities of life and the complexities of human nature. His love for Hetty, despite her transgressions, speaks to his capacity for compassion and forgiveness. However, his intense emotional attachment to Hetty clouds his judgment and understanding of her culpability, making him somewhat naive. He refuses to believe in her guilt until the evidence is overwhelming, which speaks to his deep seated idealism. This moral rigidity, while admirable, also leads to his emotional downfall. Adam's suffering caused by his internal conflict makes him a tragic figure, embodying the tension between idealism and reality. Let's look at Hetty Sorrel's character sketch. Hetty Sorrel is a young, beautiful, and naive woman who is at the center of the novel's tragic events. She is portrayed as self centered, with an overwhelming focus on appearance and superficial desires. Initially, she is charming and innocent, but her character is gradually revealed to be driven by a lack of moral depth. Hattie's beauty and desire for social elevation ultimately lead her to make devastating choices, including her ill fated relationship with Arthur Donithron and her abandonment of her child. By the time of her trial, Hetty has become almost emotionless, standing in stark contrast to the vibrant young woman Adam once loved. Let's critically evaluate her character. Hetty is a complex character, though her flaws are evident. Selfishness and vanity define much of her character as she seeks to escape the hardships of her life through romantic fantasies rather than through facing reality. Her lack of maternal affection for her child is central to her tragic downfall, illustrating her detachment from the responsibilities of motherhood. In some ways, she is a victim of her circumstances, having been raised in a rural, provincial setting that limited her understanding of the consequences of her actions. Her immobility and emotional coldness during the trial suggest her inability to process the gravity of her crime, leading to her tragic fate. Hattie's journey can be viewed as a critique of youthful folly, where self interest and desire for escape override deeper moral responsibility. Sarah Stone, character sketch. Sarah Stone is a middle aged widow who runs a small shop in Stonyton. She is a kind hearted, practical, and morally upright, and she takes pity on Hattie when the young woman arrives at her door. Sarah's actions are motivated by compassion. She offers Hattie a place to stay, and when Hattie gives birth, Sarah tends to her and the baby, although she does express some unease about Hattie's refusal to provide details about her background. Sarah is a witness to Hattie's moral decline, and she later discovers that Hattie has abandoned her child. Sarah's character can be seen as a foil to Hattie. Where Hetty is selfish, Sarah is selfless. Her compassionate nature and willingness to care for Hetty in her time of need show her as a moral compass in the novel. Sarah's decency is further emphasized when she refrains from calling the authorities immediately after Hetty leaves, because she believes Hetty might be in some kind of distress. However, Sarah's naivety is revealed when she doesn't immediately recognize the full consequences of Hetty's actions. In many ways, Sarah represents the ordinary good people who are affected by the actions of those who are more flawed, and her good intentions lead to a tragic outcome for the baby. John Olding. John Olding is a rough laborer whose encounter with Hetty during her flight from the scene of the crime sets the stage for the discovery of the baby's body. He is not particularly sensitive, but is perceptive enough to recognize that something is off with Hetty when he sees her near the haystack. His later discovery of the dead child's body and subsequent actions help to unravel the truth of Hetty's crime. His character is straightforward and pragmatic, but he is not without his own flaws, as he only investigates the strange cry out of curiosity rather than concern. Critical evaluation. John's lack of emotional depth contrasts sharply with the more introspective characters like Adam. His role in the plot is critical, but his callousness towards the situation and the child's death highlight the harshness of rural life. In many ways, John represents the pragmatic working class whose actions are driven more by practicality than by any higher moral consideration. His decision to report the child's death to the authorities, though necessary, is also motivated by a sense of self interest, curiosity, the desire for attention. His character can be viewed as emblematic of the detachment with which people in the community respond to personal tragedies. Mr. Irwin, character sketch. Mr. Irwin, the vicar of Hayslope, plays a smaller role in this chapter but is significant in representing the moral and ethical standards of the community. His testimony during the trial speaks to Hetty's previously unblemished character and virtuous upbringing. He is one of the few characters who shows a deep sense of compassion for Hetty despite her crime. Critical evaluation. Mr. Irwin serves as a moral voice of reason, emphasizing the importance of mercy in a legal system that is otherwise unforgiving. His efforts to plead for leniency highlight the human element in justice, where a person's past virtues should be considered in the face of their crimes. He stands in contrast to the harsh and unforgiving legal structures that focus solely on punishment, underscoring the tension between justice and compassion. Critical evaluation of the novel. In chapter 53, The Verdict, George Eliot masterfully portrays the culmination of Hetty Sorrel's tragic journey, highlighting the complex interplay between justice, mercy, and human frailty. The chapter centers around Hetty's trial and the emotional turmoil it inflicts on the characters, particularly Adam Bede, who remains caught between his moral ideals and the painful reality of Hetty's crime. Eliot uses the trial not just as a plot device but as a means to explore the moral consequences of Hetty's actions. The character of Hetty, once portrayed as a naive and self centered young woman, becomes emblematic of the dangers of superficial desires and emotional detachment. Her indifference during the trial, contrasted with the depth of Adam's grief, underscores her moral emptiness. While Adam remains trapped in his idealized vision of Hetty, unable to accept the truth of her culpability, Hetty herself fails to acknowledge the full gravity of her crime, showing no remorse for her actions. This disparity between Adam's emotional response and Hetty's coldness creates a powerful tragic irony, highlighting the limitation of love and idealism when confronted with moral failures. The character of Adam Bede is central to the chapter's emotional weight. His moral integrity and emotional depth are evident as he struggles to reconcile his love for Hetty with the overwhelming evidence of her guilt. His tragic flaw lies in his unyielding belief in Hetty's goodness, which prevents him from seeing the reality of her actions until it is too late. This moral rigidity, while admirable in many respects, ultimately leads to Adam's emotional collapse. Eliot critiques the illusion of redemption, suggesting that some actions, like Hetty's abandonment of her child, are beyond forgiveness, even for most well intentioned individuals. The chapter also explores the tension between justice and mercy. Mr. Irwin's plea for leniency highlights the humanizing aspect of justice, advocating for compassion and understanding in the face of a legal system that demands retribution. His character serves as a moral counterpoint to the harshness of the trial, which treats Hetty's crime with unforgiving rigor. Eliot subtly critiques the rigidity of the legal system, showing how it often fails to account for the complexities of human nature and the nuances of individual circumstances. Next, let's move on to the quotes, who said to whom, and context. My name is Sarah Stone. I am a widow and keep a small shop licensed to sell tobacco, snuff, and tea in Church Lane, Steniton. Sarah Stone to the court. Sarah Stone introduces herself as a witness to testify about Hetty's actions when she stayed at her house after giving birth. The prisoner at the bar is the same young woman who came, looking ill and tired, with a basket on her arm, and asked for a lodging at my house. Speaker is Sarah Stone, addressing the court. Sahara recounts the moment Hattie came to her for shelter and explains the circumstances surrounding her stay. Quote number 3. I couldn't help taking to the little thing and being anxious about it. Speaker is once again Sarah Stone to the court. Sarah speaks about her attachment to Hattie's child, showing her concern for both mother and the baby during their stay. Fourth, I thought she had a strange look with her eyes, and she got a bit flushed towards evening. Once again, Sarah Stone to the court. Sarah describes Hattie's behavior, hinting at her strange state during the night after giving birth. Quote 5. I was afraid of the fever, and I thought I would call an acquaintance of mine, an experienced woman, to come back with me when I went out. Sarah Stone to the court. Sarah expresses her concerns about Hattie's health and her decision to bring someone back to help. I was dreadful frightened and angry with her for going. This is important one. I think it has already come. Speaker is Sarah Stone to the court. Sarah reveals her shock and anger when she finds Hattie and the baby missing after she returned home. Quote number 7. I didn't go to give information because I had no thought she meant to do any harm. Speaker Sarah Stone to the court. Sarah explains why she didn't immediately report Hattie's disappearance, assuming Hattie didn't intend harm. Quote number 8. I couldn't help stopping to look. Speaker is John Olding to the court. John describes his curiosity when he heard a strange cry in the field and decided to investigate further. Quote number 9. I saw it was a little baby's hand. John Olding to the court. John reveals the shocking discovery of the dead baby in the woods, which he finds while investigating the strange cry. Quote number 10. I will lay my life it's that young woman's child as I met going to the coppice. Speaker is John Olding to the court. John identifies the baby as Hattie's after discovering it in the woods, suspecting its mother to be the same woman he saw earlier. Quote number 11. I'll take it to the parish and tell the constable. John Olding to his wife. After finding the dead baby, John decides to report the discovery to the authorities. Quote number 12. And when we got there, there was the prisoner sitting against the bush where I found the child. John Olding to the court. John details how he and the constable found Hattie sitting near where the baby's body was discovered. Quote number 13. She cried out when she saw us, but she never offered to move. Speaker John Olding to the court. John describes Hattie's reaction when she saw him and the constable near the place where the baby was found. 14th. Guilty. This could come in the exam. Jury foreman to the court. The jury delivers their verdict after deliberating, finding Hetty guilty of the crime. 15th. Hetty Sorrel. This is also important. The judge to Hetty. The judge addresses Hetty, preparing to announce her sentence after the guilty verdict. 16th. And then to be hanged by the neck till you be dead. Speaker the judge to Hetty. The judge pronounces the death sentence for Hetty following her conviction. 17th. No recommendation to mercy. Jury foreman to the court. The jury announces that they do not recommend mercy, a decision that adds to the severity of Hetty's fate. 18th. She had fallen down in fainting fit and was carried out of court. Speaker narration. The readers to the readers. The narrator describes Hetty's emotional collapse following the death sentence, which leads to her being removed from the courtroom. Quote number 19. Adam had given a faint groan of despair while this witness was speaking. Speaker is narrator to the readers. The narrator describes Adam's reaction to the testimony that implicates Hetty in the child's death, marking the height of his emotional turmoil. 20th. Adam lifted up his head, for there was a general movement round him. Speaker, narrator to the readers. This moment marks Adam's return to awareness as the trial concludes, leading to the moment of the verdict. With this, I close the video here. Thank you very much for watching through and listening. Consider subscribing if you haven't and share the link with your friends. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye and best of luck for your exams.